To God be the glory in the highest. I greet every one of you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Our subject of discussion today is, are Muslims the friend of God or the servant of God? Or let me say, are Muslim the friend of Allah or the servant of Allah? Many times you will have heard Muslims, brethren, brothers and sisters saying that they are not sons of God, they are not children of God, but they are just servants of God. And our text today shall be taken from the book of Quran chapter 4 verses 125. Quran chapter 4 verses 125, I read, "Who can be better in religion than one who submits his whole self to Allah, does good, and follows the way of Abraham, the true in faith? Allah did take him for a friend." Allah did take him for a friend. So what Quran chapter 4 verses 125 is trying to tell us is that who can be more better in religion than one who submit himself, who do good, and what? And who follow the way of Abraham, the true in faith. And because of his true in faith, Allah now take him for a friend. Allah did take for a friend, or Allah did take him for a friend. So the major thing is that, as we have discussed before, that we have three types of servants in the Bible. Number one, we have the kinghood servants, we have the sonhood servants, and we have the servanthood servants. Which of the servants are the Muslims? Most Muslims will tell you that they are servants. Which of the servants? And the Muslims believe that they are friends of God, according to the book of Quran chapter 4 verses 45. But I read Quran chapter 4 verses 45. "But God knows best who are your enemies, and none can be friend as God does, and none can find succor as God does." So anytime you see a Muslim, try and ask him that, or her that, "Are you a friend of God?" They will tell you that they are a friend of God. Now, but the major thing is that, can somebody be a friend of God and at the same time be a servant of God? I mean, the servant I'm talking about is servanthood servant now. Now, can somebody be a friend of God and at the same time be the servanthood servant? Or can somebody be a friend of God and at the same time be a sonhood servant? Are you getting it now? Now, Christ is the author of everything. Christ now gave us the definition of friendship and the connection between friend and servant in the book of John chapter 15 verses 15. John chapter 15 verses 15, I read, "Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you." Christ is the one talking here that I will no longer call you, I don't call you servants, but I call you friend. Can you now see that all things that I heard of my Father, I have done what? I have made known unto you. Which means that a friend, according to John chapter 15 verse 15, the definition coming from Jesus Christ, it means that a friend of God knows everything about God. Now, Christ said that we are his friend, that everything he has heard of his Father, he has made known unto us. That is a friend. And that is why Christ said that he did not call us a servant. It means that a servant cannot know all the things that God knows. I mean, a servant of God. I'm talking about servanthood servant now. Servanthood servant can never know everything that God knows. Did you get it now? But which of the servants are the Muslims? Based on their own definition, the one thing is that Muslims say that they are servants, but their servant, I don't think their servant is not servant. Is not sonhood servant, because sonhood servant simply means son of God, children of God, daughter of God. But their own servant is not sonhood servant. Therefore, their servant will be servanthood servant. And according to John chapter 15 verses 15, it is impossible for a servanthood servant to know everything that his Lord doeth. But Quran chapter 4 verses 125, Quran chapter 4 verses 125 made reference to Abraham. He made reference to Abraham, that Abraham is the friend of God. Now, let's now go to the Bible. The Bible also make it known to us that Abraham is the friend of God. In the book of Genesis chapter 18 verses 17, Genesis chapter 18 verses 17, God said something. that he cannot what? He cannot hide anything he want to do, what he want to do from Abraham. But in the book of James chapter 2 verses 23, James chapter 2 verses 23 called Abraham the friend of God. Isaiah chapter 41 verses 8 called Abraham the friend of God. If we now connect Isaiah chapter 41 verses 8 and James chapter 2 verses 23 together, and we link it with Genesis chapter 18 verses 17, we can see that God has said in Genesis chapter 18 verses 17 that he cannot do anything and hide it away from Abraham, which means that God knows that Abraham is his friend, and he will not hide anything away from Abraham. And that is why James chapter 2 verses 23 say that Abraham is the friend of God. Now, if we now link that up with John chapter 15 verses 15, we can see that what Christ said there, that I call you not servant but friend. Whatsoever I have heard of my Father, I have spoken unto you. That simply shows us that the friend that we are talking about, anybody that is the friend of God, must surely be a what? Must surely be a sonwood servant. Abraham is the friend of God, and God revealed everything to him. God said that, can I do something and hide it away from Abraham? In the book of Genesis chapter 19 verses 17, which means that Abraham is not just a servanthood servant that Christ talked about in the book of John chapter 15 verses 15. A servanthood servant cannot know everything that God doeth, but a sonwood servant knows everything. That is why I know that Christ said that I don't call you servants, but what? But I call you friends. And at the same time, Christ told us that the Bible make it known to us that for as many that have received him, them has he given power to become sons of God. It means that when Christ said that I call you friends, I call you my friend, it means that we are also sons of God because of what Christ has done. So when Christ now said that I don't call you servants, but I call you what? I call you friends. The friends that Christ talked about there is the friend that Christ talked about there has connection with what? With sonwood servant, which means that when you are a friend of God, you will surely be a what? You will be a son unto God. Now, and if we should link that to John chapter 12 verses 26, John chapter 12 verses 26, in John chapter 12 verses 26, it is made known unto us that Christ said that if any man follow me, said that if any man serve me, let him follow me, and where I am, there shall my servants be. So the servant that John chapter 12 verses 26 talks about does not talk about the servant that is servanthood servant, but it talks about the what? About the sonwood servants. Now, summarily, if the Muslims say that they are what? They are friend of God, and they are not son of God, they are not daughters of God, they are not children of God, it means that they are what? They are servanthood servants, and they are not sonwood servants, because it is impossible for you to be a friend of God without becoming a sonwood servant, because if it is only a what? It is only a servanthood servant that will not know what his Lord doeth. Now let's now go back to the Quran and see what Muhammad also, what Allah told Muhammad himself. Does Muhammad knows everything? Does God hide something from Muhammad? Allah has hide many things from Muhammad, and you can find that in the book of Quran chapter 6 verses 50 and Quran chapter 6 verses 50. I read, say, O Muhammad, I tell you not that with me are the treasures of Allah, nor do I know what is hidden, nor do I tell you that I am an angel, but I follow what is revealed unto me. Muhammad is the one talking here. He said that he did not tell those people that he was preaching to that he has the treasures of Allah with him. He said that he did not know what is hidden. Muhammad is the one talking there, that he did not know what is hidden. What is hidden? What is beyond human reasoning? He did not know it. So if Muhammad, the first man in Islam, the prophet and apostle of Islam, did not know everything God wants to do, and God still hides something from him, it means that the relationship between God and the first man in Islam is what? Is not sonwood servant, which means it is servanthood servant. But Christ said in the book of John chapter 15 verse 6, he said that all things Look at it, just imagine it. When you say that all things without an exception, but in Quran chapter 6 verses 50, it was said by what? By Muhammad himself that he did not know the hidden things of God. He said that nor do I know what is hidden. What is hidden? He did not even have the treasures of Allah with him. So this shows that the relationship between God or Allah, between God and the Muslims is what? Is a servanthood to servant relationship, and not a sonwood is not a sonwood servant relationship. And if this is the case, it means that no Muslim can become a friend of God. Yes, it means that no Muslim can become a friend of God, because if Muslim can become a friend of God, they will also become a sonwood servant. But since they say that they cannot become the friend, since they say that they cannot become that they are not sonwood servant, it means that they are not friend of God, because you can't become a friend of God without becoming sonwood servant. And this shows that the Muslims are not following the way of Allah, because Quran chapter 4 verses 125 make it known to us that who can be better in religion than one who submits his whole self to Allah, who does good and follows the way of Abraham, the true in faith. Allah did take for a friend. It means that those people that follow the way of Allah, those people that follow, those are the people that follow Abraham's step in faith. And if Muslims want to follow Abraham's step in faith, Abraham become a friend of God, and at the same time, Abraham become a sonwood servant. Abraham is a friend of God. If Abraham is a friend of God, the Muslims also need to become a friend of God. And if the Muslims are the friend of God, they cannot become a servant again. If they become this friend of God, they will also become the children of God. It is impossible for you to become a son, a friend of God, and you will not become a child of God. So Muslims, in case you meet a Muslim and the Muslim tell you that I am a friend, you ask that person, are you a friend of God? You can say that I'm a friend of God. But if you say that are you a son of God? Say that. So tell them that it is impossible for them to become a son or a friend of God without becoming a son of God, according to John chapter 15 verses 15. God bless you all. Jesus only can save. Try to share the words, try to share the message, and God will bless you all.